There's a point where thinking stops helping you and starts hurting you, where every decision feels heavier than it should, every step feels risky, and your mind becomes a maze you can't escape. Overthinking convinces you that you're being careful, but really, it's stealing your courage one thought at a time. It freezes your potential, blinds your intuition, and turns simple moments into mental storms. And discipline is the force that breaks the cycle, the power that frees you from overthinking and pushes you into flow. But life was never meant to be calculated to perfection. It was meant to be lived. You weren't designed to stand still, replaying fears like broken records. You were built to move, to try, to explore, to grow. Flow begins the moment you stop needing certainty and start trusting your own momentum. This audiobook is your reminder that clarity doesn't come from thinking harder, it comes from stepping forward, from challenging yourself to act even when your mind is loud, from choosing movement over paralysis, curiosity over fear, presence over perfection. Because when you stop overthinking, you stop drowning in what if and start rising into what's possible. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Trap of Overthinking. Overthinking begins quietly, almost innocently. It starts as a desire to make the best choice, to avoid mistakes, to protect yourself. But slowly, the mind that wanted clarity becomes cluttered. Every thought spawns a dozen more, and soon you're trapped in mental loops that lead nowhere. What was supposed to help you decide ends up strangling your courage. You watch life instead of living it. You analyze possibilities instead of experiencing them. And each moment spent thinking becomes another moment stolen from action. The trap tightens because overthinking feels productive. It tricks you into believing you're preparing, planning, being responsible. But in reality, it replaces movement with mental speculation. You construct entire scenarios in your head, reacting to futures that don't exist. The more time you spend thinking, the less energy you have for doing. You become exhausted not from effort, but from the weight of imagined burdens. Overthinking is rooted in fear disguised as intelligence. Your mind tries to protect you by predicting every outcome, avoiding every risk, preventing every disappointment. But the irony is brutal. The more you try to avoid suffering, the more you suffer mentally. You get trapped inside the very fear you're trying to outrun. You don't escape pain, you rehearse it. The longer you stay in this mental cage, the harder it becomes to trust yourself. Every decision feels dangerous. Every choice seems like a potential mistake. You begin to believe something is wrong with you because you struggle to act. But the paralysis you feel isn't incompetence, it's overload. You were never meant to hold that many possibilities in your mind at once. Overthinking makes even simple decisions feel monumental. Picking a path, sending a message, saying yes or no, everything becomes a moral dilemma. Your mind inflates small moments into life or death choices. And the more pressure you put on each decision, the more impossible they become. What should take seconds now takes hours, days, or months. When your mind becomes a battlefield, you lose touch with reality. You start reacting to scenarios instead of facts. You get anxious about conversations that never happened, failures that never occurred, judgments that no one made. Overthinking makes you live inside imaginary threats instead of actual experiences. You imprison yourself in stories your mind wrote without evidence. The trap deepens when you seek constant reassurance. You look for signs, answers, validation, anything to make the uncertainty go away. But reassurance never lasts, because overthinking always finds a new angle to worry about. The comfort fades quickly, and you're back where you started, searching for certainty that doesn't exist. Overthinking disconnects you from your instincts. Your inner wisdom, the part of you that knows what feels right, gets drowned out by noise. You stop trusting your gut, even though your gut has guided you through every difficult moment before now. The mind insists on control, but true clarity often rises from stillness, not calculation. You start believing that thinking more will eventually lead to the perfect answer. But perfection is the illusion that fuels the trap. Life doesn't reward perfect choices, it rewards movement. Overthinking makes you obsessed with avoiding the wrong path, forgetting that any path walked with presence becomes the right one. The more time you spend analyzing, the more confidence you lose. You begin to associate action with danger, mistakes with disaster, uncertainty with failure. Overthinking turns you into your own captor, holding yourself hostage with doubts that were never real to begin with. Overthinking often comes from living too much in the past or the future. You replay old mistakes, trying to rewrite them. You rehearse future scenarios to prevent pain. But in doing so, you abandon the only place where life actually happens, the present. The more your mind escapes the present moment, the more anxiety fills the space left behind. You may notice that when you overthink, your body tightens, your chest constricts, your breath shortens, your muscles tense. This is your body responding to imaginary danger. Your mind creates storms, and your body prepares for impact. Overthinking turns your nervous system into a battleground, exhausting you physically from internal wars. It also steals your joy. Even when good things happen, you struggle to enjoy them fully because your mind jumps to what might go wrong next. Overthinking makes you suspicious of happiness, distant from beauty, and disconnected from peace. You become so afraid of losing good moments that you forget to live them. The trap convinces you that you need certainty before you act. But certainty is an illusion, a psychological crutch. Life has never given guarantees, yet you've survived every moment so far. Overthinking makes you believe the unknown is dangerous, but the unknown is where your growth actually lives. Overthinking also limits your creativity. When your mind loops the same fears repeatedly, it has no space left for new ideas, inspirations, or possibilities. Creativity requires openness, and overthinking shuts the door. You end up stuck in predictable patterns, unable to innovate, because fear refuses to let you explore. You may notice that overthinking often shows up strongest at night, when the world quiets and you're left alone with your mind. Silence becomes loud, and thoughts become heavy. This is because overthinking thrives in stillness when it's not guided. Without awareness, your mind wanders into fear by default. The trap becomes dangerous when overthinking begins to rewrite your identity. You stop seeing yourself as capable, strong, intuitive. You start seeing yourself as uncertain, anxious, indecisive. But these labels are symptoms, not truths. Overthinking isn't who you are. It's a pattern your mind learned to feel safe. And anything learned can be unlearned. Overthinking delays healing. Instead of processing emotions, you analyze them. Instead of feeling your pain, you dissect it. This creates emotional stagnation. Nothing moves, nothing resolves, nothing transforms. Healing requires acceptance and presence, not mental dissection. The final layer of the trap is believing that your thoughts are reality. When you assume every fearful thought is true, you surrender your power. The mind becomes the authority, and you become the follower. But thoughts are not facts, they're interpretations. The moment you question them, the trap begins to crack. And ultimately, overthinking steals the one resource you can never regain: time. Hours lost in fear, days lost in indecision, months lost waiting for clarity that can only come from movement. Overthinking steals life by convincing you not to live it. But the moment you recognize the trap, you reclaim your power. Awareness is the key that unlocks the door. Chapter 2. Why your mind creates fear that doesn't exist. Your mind creates fear long before danger appears. It does this because, at its core, the brain is designed for survival, not happiness. Happiness is optional to the mind, survival is mandatory. So your brain constantly scans for threats, even where none exist. It imagines worst-case scenarios, not because it hates you, but because it believes preparing for danger will keep you alive. The problem is that in a modern world with very few true threats, that survival instinct misfires. It treats uncertainty like danger and possibility like risk. Fear is your mind's attempt to protect you from emotional pain. It remembers every disappointment, every heartbreak, every failure, and it tries to prevent a repeat. But instead of protecting you, it becomes overprotective. It warns you about things that are not dangerous and convinces you that imagining pain is safer than risking growth. This is why your mind often tells you not to try, not to trust, not to step forward. It thinks safety is the same as staying still. The mind creates fear to avoid vulnerability. Vulnerability means openness, and openness means potential loss. Your mind doesn't understand emotional evolution. It only understands emotional exposure. So the moment you step into new territory, a new relationship, a new goal, a new dream, the mind panics. It tries to pull you back to what's familiar, not because familiar is better, but because familiar is predictable. Predictability feels like safety. Fear is also born from imagination. The same imagination that allows you to dream also allows you to terrify yourself. Your mind can create future disasters with stunning detail scenarios more dramatic than reality ever would be. And because the brain doesn't fully distinguish between imagined danger and real danger, your body reacts, your heart races, your palms sweat, your breath shortens. All for a threat that only exists in thought. Your mind creates fear because it hates uncertainty. The unknown is its worst nightmare. And because the future is always unknown, the mind fills the blank space with fear. It paints it with failure, judgment, rejection, embarrassment. That's why even simple decisions become difficult. Your mind treats the unknown as a threat instead of an opportunity. This habit leads to anxiety and paralysis, trapping you in a cycle of inaction. Fear appears when you step outside your identity. When you try to become someone new, stronger, braver, more successful, your mind resists. It's attached to your current version because it knows how to protect that version. Growth requires shedding old layers, but the mind sees that shedding as danger. So it creates fear to stop you from evolving. It believes it's keeping you safe, but really, it's keeping you small. Your mind often creates fear to avoid embarrassment. Humans fear social rejection deeply. It's wired into our biology. Long ago, being rejected by the tribe meant death. So today, even something as simple as speaking up, posting online, or sharing an idea can trigger ancient fear responses. You fear judgment not because it's dangerous, but because your biology hasn't updated to modern reality. Fear is amplified by repetition. The more you rehearse the same negative thoughts, the stronger they become. The neural pathways deepen. Soon, fear becomes your default response to anything new. You begin expecting things to go wrong, even when nothing is wrong. The habit of fearing becomes stronger than the habit of living. Your mind creates fear because it doesn't know the difference between preparation and paralysis. It thinks thinking more always leads to better outcomes. But overthinking eventually becomes a trap. Too many possibilities, too many outcomes, too much pressure. The brain treats that overload as danger, creating fear where clarity should be. Fear often comes from unresolved emotional wounds. Childhood criticism, past trauma, broken trust, they leave marks the mind never forgets. So when something today resembles something painful from the past, the mind reacts instantly. It creates fear, not because the current situation is dangerous, but because something inside you still remembers an old hurt. Fear arises when you attach your worth to outcomes. If succeeding means you're valuable, then failing means you're nothing, at least according to the mind. This distorted association creates panic around mistakes. The mind begins to fear not the event itself, but the meaning you've attached to it. This makes everyday risks feel life-threatening. Your mind creates fear as a shortcut. It takes the most painful memory and uses it as a universal warning sign. If one person betrayed you, the mind warns you about everyone. If one project failed, the mind warns you against trying again. If one dream fell apart, the mind tries to protect you by avoiding all dreams. Fear becomes a blanket rule applied everywhere. Fear also appears when the mind confuses discomfort with danger. Discomfort is normal, growth hurts, change stretches you. But the mind treats discomfort like a warning, telling you to retreat. This confusion prevents you from stepping into opportunities simply because they don't feel familiar yet. Your mind creates fear because it prefers certainty over happiness. Even a miserable certainty feels safer than a beautiful unknown. The comfort zone becomes a psychological shelter, but one that quietly suffocates you. Fear keeps you inside that shelter, whispering that leaving it will lead to disaster, even when your heart knows staying is slowly killing your spirit. Fear is often borrowed from others. Parents, teachers, society. Their fears become your fears. You absorb them without realizing. Don't take risks. Be careful. Think before you act. Don't fail. These warnings, meant to protect you, become invisible chains. You start living by fears that aren't even yours. Your mind creates fear because it exaggerates the cost of trying and minimizes the cost of not trying. It focuses on what might go wrong if you act, but it forgets what definitely goes wrong if you don't act. The cost of inaction, regret, stagnation, missed opportunities is far greater, but the mind rarely calculates it. This imbalance keeps you stuck. Fear is strengthened when you avoid the things that scare you. Avoidance teaches the mind that the fear was valid, reinforcing the cycle. Each time you run from something uncomfortable, you confirm to your brain that it was dangerous. This makes the fear grow and your courage weaken. Avoidance is fertilizer for fear. Your mind creates fear because it mistakes thinking for control. It believes that if it can predict every outcome, it can prevent pain. But life has never honored predictions, it honors participation. No amount of thinking can replace the wisdom that comes from doing. When you cling to mental control, you lose real control over your life. And ultimately, your mind creates fear because it doesn't know your strength, only your history. It protects the version of you that existed before growth, before healing, before wisdom. It doesn't realize you are more capable now. Fear is your mind clinging to an old identity while your soul is ready to evolve. The more you understand how fear is created, the less power it has. When you realize it's a mental reflex, not a prophecy, you stop obeying it. You stop mistaking imagined danger for real danger. And that's when freedom begins, not by eliminating fear, but by understanding it so deeply that it can no longer control your life. Chapter 3. Movement is the cure for mental paralysis. Mental paralysis begins the moment your thoughts start running faster than your actions. You sit still, trapped in loops of what if, while the world moves without you. The longer you remain stuck in your head, the harder it becomes to break free. But movement, any movement, disrupts the cycle instantly. It interrupts the fear, redirects the mind, and reminds your body that you were built for motion, not stagnation. Overthinking thrives in stillness, but it cannot survive momentum. Movement is the antidote to anxiety because the mind can't spiral and act at the same time. When you move, you shift from reactors to creators. You stop feeding thoughts with attention and start giving your brain something else to focus on: the next step, the next breath, the next action. That shift is powerful. It pulls you out of your head and back into the world where life actually happens. When paralysis takes over, your mind becomes a prison cell. Every thought becomes a locked door. But the moment you move even slightly, you crack the door open. You begin to remember that fear lives in imagination, while freedom lives in action. One step, even an imperfect one, loosens the chains of mental stagnation. Movement restores clarity. When you act, you gather new data, new experiences, new perspectives. Action gives you real-world feedback that thinking alone can never provide. Suddenly, the things you feared aren't as big as they seemed. You realize that most obstacles shrink the moment you approach them. Thinking magnifies problems, movement reduces them. Your body is wired to calm your mind through motion. Walking, stretching, cleaning, creating these physical acts lower anxiety, regulate breath, and soften mental tension. It's not magic, it's biology. When the body moves, the nervous system stabilizes. That's why you often find better answers while walking than while sitting and panicking. Movement breaks the illusion that you must feel ready before you begin. Readiness is a myth created by fear. If you wait for confidence, you'll wait forever. Action creates confidence. Confidence never creates action. Every time you move without feeling prepared, you teach your mind that fear is not a command, it's background noise. When your mind is paralyzed, the smallest task becomes a bridge back to strength. Washing a dish, opening a window, taking a shower, writing one sentence. These micro-actions may seem insignificant, but they have immense psychological power. They signal to your brain, we are not stuck, we are capable. And that signal grows louder with every small step. Overthinking convinces you that solutions come from more thinking, but solutions come from engagement. You cannot think your way into clarity, you must move your way into it. Every time you take action, even without certainty, you teach your mind to trust the unknown. That trust is the beginning of mental freedom. Movement pulls you back into the present moment. Overthinking drags you into the past and throws you into the future, but action roots you in the now. The present is the only place where power exists, where choices can be made, where healing can begin, where courage can grow. Movement is presence in motion. When you take action, even small action, you disrupt fear's rhythm. Fear needs stillness to multiply. Movement breaks its pattern. You stop feeding the monster with your attention and start starving it with decisiveness. Over time, the monster shrinks because you stop sitting with it long enough for it to grow. The cure for paralysis is not motivation, it's direction. Motivation comes and goes, but direction stays. When you know where you want to go, even a small step in that direction breaks the illusion of stuckness. You don't need enthusiasm. You need movement aligned with intention. Fear loses power when you approach it physically. When you avoid the thing that scares you, fear grows. When you move toward it, fear diminishes. Your mind realizes the threat wasn't real, it was imagined. Movement replaces imagination with experience, and experience always wins. Consistency matters more than intensity. You don't need dramatic action. You need repeated action. A quiet daily effort rewires the brain far more effectively than occasional bursts of energy. Movement done consistently becomes momentum, and momentum becomes transformation. Movement builds identity. Every action you take reinforces a belief about who you are. When you move in spite of fear, you tell yourself, I am someone who takes action. I am someone who keeps going. That identity becomes stronger than any doubt that tries to hold you back. Action creates direction, but it also creates self-respect. Nothing feels worse than disappointing yourself, and nothing feels better than showing yourself, I did it. That pride, small, private, quiet, becomes fuel. It becomes proof that you can shape your life instead of letting your thoughts shape you. Movement doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be honest. When you move with intention, even clumsy intention, you reclaim your power. You stop waiting for the ideal scenario and start living in the reality you have. Movement aligns you with truth. The truth that you are capable of more than your fear suggests. When you take action, the world responds differently. Opportunities appear. Energy shifts. People notice. Life rewards those who move, not those who wait. Overthinking closes doors before you ever reach them. Movement opens doors you never knew existed. The mind cannot remain paralyzed in a body that's in motion. When you move, you create new neural pathways, pathways that override old fear patterns. You literally reshape your mind by engaging your body. This is why action is not just psychological, it's physiological evolution. Movement breaks self-doubt's predictability. Doubt expects you to freeze, to hesitate, to retreat. But when you act anyway, you shock the system. You interrupt the script. You teach the mind that doubt is not destiny. It's merely noise you've learned not to obey. When mental paralysis sets in, the mind becomes a noisy room. Movement quiets that room. It gives your thoughts somewhere to go into the world, into creation, into progress. Stillness without awareness amplifies fear. Movement with intention dissolves it. Every action you take is a message to your future. It says, I am willing to meet you halfway. The future is not built by thought, it's built by steps. Dreams materialize when your feet move in their direction, even if your mind trembles. Movement is forgiveness in motion. It lets you release the regret of yesterday and step into the possibility of today. It's how you stop punishing yourself for what you didn't do and start celebrating what you're becoming. Movement is healing, disguised as effort. The cure for paralysis is not confidence, it's courage. Courage is action taken despite fear. It's the willingness to move with a shaking mind, a trembling heart, and uncertain steps. Courage doesn't wait for clarity. Courage creates it. Movement reconnects you with the rhythm of life. Everything in nature moves. Rivers flow, winds travel, seasons shift. Stagnation is unnatural. When you stop moving, your spirit feels disconnected. When you move again, even gently, you reconnect with the natural flow of existence. Each step reminds you that progress doesn't come from perfection, it comes from persistence. You don't need to fix everything today. You just need to move a little. Progress expands with repetition, not pressure. When you reclaim movement, you reclaim possibility. You realize that you're not stuck, you just haven't moved yet. That realization alone breaks the cage. You stop seeing yourself as trapped and start seeing yourself as becoming. And one day, after many small steps, you'll look back and realize that the version of you who was once frozen has been replaced by someone who moves with intention, clarity, and quiet strength. Mental paralysis didn't disappear. You simply outgrew it by walking forward. Chapter 4. Trusting your instincts over your doubts. Your instincts are older than your fear. They were built into you long before you learned to doubt yourself. Instincts come from experience, intuition, and the quiet intelligence of your subconscious mind, the part of you that has observed every moment of your life without judgment. Doubt, however, is learned. It comes from criticism, rejection, comparison, and fear. When you understand that instincts are natural and doubts are conditioned, you realize which one deserves your loyalty. Instincts guide, doubts restrict. Instincts open paths, doubts close them. Your instincts whisper, but your doubts shout. That's why so many people mistake doubt for truth, because doubt is loud, dramatic, and urgent. Instinct, on the other hand, is gentle. It nudges rather than pushes. It doesn't demand, it suggests. But just because a voice is quiet doesn't mean it's wrong. Often, the quiet inner tug is the one that knows exactly where you need to go, while the loud voice is just fear wearing confidence like a mask. Instinct speaks in feelings, not explanations. It shows up as a pull toward something or a discomfort around something else. Doubt, however, tries to justify itself with long arguments, endless what-ifs, and imaginary outcomes. The mind is a storyteller, but not always a truthful one. Instinct doesn't need stories, it needs presence. The more present you become, the clearer your instincts become. There's a reason your instincts feel right before you can explain them. Your subconscious gathers information. Your conscious mind never notices tone, energy, subtle patterns, past lessons. Doubt comes from overthinking, but instinct comes from deep awareness. When a situation feels off, that feeling isn't random. It's your inner intelligence recognizing something your logic hasn't caught up to yet. Trusting your instincts is hard because you've been trained to value logic over intuition. Society rewards rational explanations and criticizes invisible signals. But leadership, creativity, and growth often come from those invisible signals, the moments when you listen to something deeper than facts. Logic builds the plan. Instinct chooses the direction. Both matter, but instinct is what keeps your soul involved in your choices. Your instincts guide you toward alignment, not comfort. They don't promise the safest path, they point to the right one. Doubts prefer the familiar, even when the familiar is killing your spirit. Instincts push you to evolve, to step into opportunities that feel intimidating but meaningful. That's why instinct can feel scary. Your soul pulls you forward while your fear begs you to stay small. Doubt thrives on hesitation. The longer you wait, the louder your doubts grow. Instinct thrives on immediacy. When you follow your first feeling, you move with clarity. When you overthink it, doubt enters and starts poisoning your direction. You've probably felt this, how your first instinct was right, but you talked yourself out of it, and later regretted not listening. Regret is the price of choosing fear over intuition. Your instincts are linked to your values, your authenticity, and your truth. Doubts are linked to your wounds, insecurities, and fears. When you trust your instincts, you're trusting your true self. When you trust your doubts, you're trusting the part of you shaped by pain. Instinct is self-alignment. Doubt is self-abandonment. You can't trust your instincts when your mind is noisy. Doubt lives in noise. Intuition lives in silence. That's why your instincts usually appear when you're calm during a walk, in the shower, late at night when the world quiets down. Silence is the environment where your inner voice finally becomes audible. If you want intuition to guide you, you must create pockets of quiet in your life. Instinct isn't impulsive, it's intelligent. Impulse is reaction, intuition is recognition. Impulse comes from emotion, instinct comes from awareness. People confuse the two because they both feel immediate. But true instinct leaves behind a sense of certainty, not chaos. After following intuition, you feel peace. After following impulse, you feel confusion. Your instincts often guide you away from people long before your mind understands why. You feel a shift, a distance, a heaviness. You don't need evidence, the energy speaks. Doubts try to rationalize, telling you you're overreacting. But instincts pick up on things logic can't measure. When your spirit pulls away from someone, trust that discomfort. It's your inner wisdom protecting your future. Instincts also guide you toward opportunities before they make sense logically. You feel drawn to a project, a dream, a direction, even when you don't know how it will work. Doubt calls it unrealistic, but instinct recognizes potential long before it becomes visible. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in life come from following a feeling that logic couldn't justify yet. Doubt is fed by old wounds. If someone once made you feel unworthy, your doubt will echo their voice. If you were raised to seek approval, your doubt will question every decision. But instinct doesn't come from wounds, it comes from wisdom. It's the part of you untouched by anyone's opinion. When you trust it, you're choosing your truth over your trauma. Your instincts are connected to your body. Fear speaks through your chest and your mind, but intuition speaks through your gut. You can feel truth physically, a heaviness when something is wrong, a lightness when something is right. Your body often knows before your thoughts do. Doubt forces you into your head. Instinct grounds you in your body. Instinct is clarity without explanation. You don't need to explain why something feels right. You don't need approval for your inner knowing. The need to justify comes from insecurity, not intuition. Your instincts don't need permission, only trust. Every time you ignore your instincts, you weaken your relationship with yourself. You teach yourself that your inner guidance cannot be trusted. This creates confusion, self-doubt, and emotional disconnection. But every time you trust your instincts, even in small decisions, that trust grows stronger. Self-trust is built through repetition, just like self-doubt is. Doubt constantly imagines danger. Instinct recognizes truth. Doubt asks, what if it goes wrong? Instinct asks, what if this is right? Doubt focuses on fear. Instinct focuses on alignment. Fear exaggerates. Truth remains steady. The more you learn to distinguish between the two, the easier your life becomes. Your instincts don't worry about outcomes, they focus on direction. Doubt tries to control everything because it's terrified of uncertainty. But intuition knows that you don't need to predict the path to walk it. You only need the next step. Instinct gives you that step. Trusting your instincts strengthens your courage. When you act on your inner knowing, you prove to yourself that your judgment matters. This builds confidence not from compliments or achievements, but from inner alignment. The strongest people aren't fearless, they are self-trusting. Instinct helps you break cycles. Doubt keeps you repeating old patterns because it's scared of change. Instinct guides you out of those loops, toward people and places that match your growth. If doubt keeps you stuck in old chapters, instinct helps you turn the page. Intuition is often uncomfortable because it pushes you into growth. It tells you to leave situations you've outgrown, confront things you avoid, or step into dreams you're scared to pursue. Doubt will scream, "Stay where it's safe," but instinct whispers, "You were made for more." The whisper is the truth. Your instincts protect your peace. When something is wrong for you, even if it looks right on paper, your inner voice will resist. You'll feel drained, uneasy, misaligned. That discomfort is not random. It's your spirit telling you to step away. Doubt tries to silence that discomfort, but intuition uses it as guidance. Instinct is your inner compass, always pointing toward your highest path. Even when you've been lost for years, intuition doesn't disappear, it waits. The moment you listen again, you'll feel it connecting you to your next chapter. Doubt keeps you looping. Instinct keeps you evolving. Trusting your instincts doesn't mean ignoring logic, it means balancing it. Use logic to plan, intuition to choose, courage to act. When all three align, you become unstoppable. But when doubt dominates, you become paralyzed. Your instincts know when you're forcing something. They tug you backward when you're chasing something that isn't right for you. They push you forward when you're holding yourself back from something meaningful. Doubt interferes with this flow, but intuition restores it. Instinct teaches you to walk away, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. When something drains your energy, intuition encourages distance. When something nourishes your growth, intuition pulls you closer. Learning to trust these inner movements is how you protect your peace. Doubt is fueled by seeking reassurance. Instinct is strengthened by self-reliance. When you constantly seek others' opinions, you weaken your inner voice. But when you make choices from within, regardless of external approval, you become centered, grounded, and powerful. Your instincts reveal what your soul craves, long before your mind admits it. You may feel drawn towards something that scares you, a dream, a relationship, a new chapter. That pull is sacred. It means your future is calling. Doubt will tell you to stay where it's safe. Instinct will tell you where you're meant to grow. Trusting your instincts leads to authenticity. When you choose based on inner truth, not fear, you stop living a life shaped by expectations and start living one shaped by purpose. Doubt forces you to shrink. Instinct invites you to expand. You don't need to have evidence to trust your instincts. Sometimes your inner knowing is the evidence. Intuition sees further than your eyes, feels deeper than your thoughts, and understands before your mind processes. Doubt demands proof. Instinct is proof. Your instincts are the language of your higher self, the version of you that already knows where you're meant to go. Doubt is the voice of your old self, the version trapped in past pain. When you trust intuition, you choose evolution over repetition. Instinct often appears as peace, even in scary decisions. Doubt appears as tension, even in safe decisions. Peace doesn't mean the choice is easy, it means it's right. Tension doesn't mean danger, it means misalignment. Your body knows the difference. Your instincts will always lead you to growth. They push you to shed identities you've outgrown, release people who no longer match your frequency, and walk toward versions of yourself waiting to be unlocked. Doubt tries to keep you as you are. Instinct tries to reveal who you could be. Every time you trust your instincts, you return to yourself. You reconnect with your truth, your courage, your path. You stop living through fear and start living through alignment, and alignment is where your power lives. In the end, trusting your instincts is not about never feeling doubt, it's about hearing doubt without obeying it. Your instincts are the compass inside your soul, always pointing toward the direction of your becoming. When you learn to follow that compass, your life transforms not through force, but through inner truth guiding every step. Chapter 5. Breaking the need for perfect decisions. The need for perfect decisions is the quiet destroyer of potential. It keeps you frozen in place, terrified of choosing wrong, terrified of disappointing yourself, terrified of regret. But perfection was never the requirement for growth. Movement was. The obsession with choosing the right path blinds you to the truth. Any path you walk with intention becomes the right one. Perfection is an illusion fear created to keep you still. Perfection demands certainty, but life never gives certainty. Life gives opportunities, risks, clues, possibilities, but never guarantees. Waiting for the perfect decision means waiting for something that doesn't exist. People who grow aren't the ones who always choose correctly. They're the ones who choose consistently and learn quickly. Every imperfect step reveals the next one. The fear of choosing wrong often comes from childhood, from moments when mistakes were punished instead of taught. So now your mind treats every decision like a threat, as if one wrong move will ruin everything. But the strongest people today are the ones who allowed themselves to be wrong yesterday. Mistakes didn't break them, they built them. Perfectionism disguises itself as responsibility. It convinces you that overthinking is preparation, that delaying is wisdom, that fear is caution. But perfection is just fear with good manners. It keeps you planning instead of acting, dreaming instead of doing. You don't need the best decision, you need a brave one. Every time you wait for perfect conditions, you give away time you'll never get back. Opportunities don't stay still. They move. Doors close. Momentum fades. Perfectionism doesn't protect you from failure. It guarantees stagnation. A messy start is always more powerful than a perfect intention. People who succeed don't avoid mistakes, they expect them. They know action comes with risks, but inaction comes with guarantees. The risk of failing is smaller than the cost of never trying. Perfection demands no mistakes. Growth demands them. The more mistakes you allow yourself, the faster your life expands. You have to accept that wrong decisions are part of right destinies. Many of the best chapters of your life will begin with decisions that didn't make sense at the time. A wrong turn can lead you to the right place. A lost opportunity can reveal a better one. Mistakes redirect. Perfection traps. Perfectionism creates mental exhaustion because it forces you to calculate every outcome before you move. But life isn't a math problem, it's a process. You learn by engaging, not predicting. You gain clarity by stepping forward, not by analyzing the horizon from afar. Movement reveals what thinking hides. Trying to make perfect decisions is really trying to avoid discomfort. You don't fear being wrong, you fear feeling wrong. You fear embarrassment, doubt, regret, judgment. But discomfort is temporary. Stagnation is permanent. The willingness to feel uncertain is how you grow into someone who can handle more than you ever imagined. The need for perfect decisions comes from the belief that your worth is tied to your accuracy, but you are not a machine, you're a becoming. Your value does not rise or fall with your choices. You don't lose dignity by choosing wrong. You gain wisdom by choosing at all. Life rewards the brave, not the flawless. When you force every choice to be perfect, you stop listening to your instincts. You let fear negotiate your destiny. Instinct whispers direction. Perfection demands assurance, but assurance never comes. Trusting yourself begins the moment you stop requiring perfection and start valuing movement. Perfectionism convinces you that the consequences of choosing wrong are catastrophic, but they rarely are. Most decisions are correctable. Most mistakes are survivable. What's actually dangerous is the habit of choosing nothing. Choices shape you. Hesitation dissolves you. You cannot discover your potential while standing still. You unlock your power by engaging with the world, by making decisions that require courage, by learning through motion. Perfectionism asks, what if I fail? Growth asks, what if this works? Your life is shaped by the question you choose to follow. When you break the need for perfect decisions, you reclaim your freedom. Suddenly, life becomes lighter. You stop treating every choice like a final judgment and start seeing them as experiments. You realize nothing is wasted. Everything teaches. Every path, even the wrong ones, contributes to your evolution. Perfectionism creates a false timeline. It convinces you that other people are moving faster because they know something you don't. But the only difference between you and them is that they chose imperfectly and moved anyway. They let their progress be messy, but real. And messy progress always outruns polished hesitation. Your intuition can't guide you when you demand perfection. Intuition speaks through direction, not certainty. It gives you a feeling, a pull, a sense, but never a promise. When you let go of perfection, you allow intuition to finally lead. And intuition almost always knows before logic does. Breaking the need for perfect decisions begins with one truth. Clarity comes after action, not before it. You don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. You don't need a perfect plan to begin. You don't need absolute confidence to move. You learn by doing, not by thinking. Your brain is wired to avoid risk, not to create fulfillment. That means your default state is hesitation. You must consciously override that instinct by choosing action even when you feel uncertain. The more you do it, the stronger that muscle becomes. Courage is trained through repetition, not born through perfection. Perfectionism is just self-doubt wearing ambition as a disguise. It keeps you focused on not failing instead of on becoming. It makes you aim for no mistakes instead of aiming for progress. But the moment you choose progress over perfection, you start living instead of just planning. You don't need a perfect decision, you need a direction. Even a wrong direction teaches you something about who you are and what you want. Perfect decisions are fantasies created by fear. Real decisions are how you build your future. A choice made today is more powerful than a perfect choice made never. Most breakthroughs happen after imperfect attempts. The first draft is messy, the first step is shaky, the first try is awkward, but nothing becomes great without passing through its unpolished stage. Perfection demands instant brilliance. Growth allows evolution. Choose evolution. Perfectionism creates a distorted sense of danger. Your mind exaggerates the consequences of being wrong, turning small choices into massive threats. But most outcomes are far gentler than your imagination predicts. Fear amplifies failure. Action shrinks it. You break the illusion by moving. When you release the need for perfect decisions, you reclaim your creativity. Perfection kills originality because it traps you inside the fear of being judged. But when you allow yourself to try, to explore, to experiment, you rediscover your ability to shape your world with authenticity instead of fear. The pressure for perfection often comes from comparison. You see others succeeding and assume they chose perfectly, but you're seeing their chapter 20, not their chapter 1. Behind every finished success are hundreds of imperfect attempts. Comparison hides their failures and magnifies your doubts. When you stop chasing perfection, you start trusting your path. You realize that the journey is not linear. Sometimes you move forward, sometimes sideways, sometimes backward, but all of it contributes to your becoming. Perfection tries to force a straight line. Life moves like a river. The need for perfect decisions makes you fear the unknown, but everything you want lives inside the unknown. Growth, love, opportunity, transformation, they exist beyond your comfort zone. You cannot reach them while clinging to certainty. You must step despite uncertainty. Perfection pressures you to make decisions that look good, not ones that feel right. It makes you choose safety over purpose, approval over alignment, predictability over passion. Breaking perfection means choosing yourself over expectations, and that single shift can change your entire life. Your future does not require perfection. It requires participation. Your dream life will not appear because you thought hard enough. It will appear because you acted brave enough. Every time you choose movement over hesitation, you rewrite your destiny in real time. When you break the need for perfect decisions, you stop fearing regret. Because regret doesn't come from choosing wrong, it comes from not choosing at all. The pain of inaction is far heavier than the pain of mistakes. At least mistakes move you forward. Hesitation holds you hostage. You must allow yourself to be a learner. Learners don't demand perfection, they expect growth. They choose progress over pride, curiosity over fear, humility over stagnation. When you become a learner, you remove the pressure to be flawless and embrace the freedom to evolve. The need for perfect decisions comes from the illusion that there is one correct path. But life is not a single train track, it's a network of possibilities. There isn't just one destiny, there are many versions of you waiting to be lived. Perfection chains you to one path. Action lets you explore them all. Choosing imperfectly trains your adaptability. Every time life doesn't go as planned, you learn how to adjust, pivot, and rise. Adaptability is far more powerful than perfection. Perfection breaks under pressure. Adaptability becomes stronger because of it. Breaking the need for perfect decisions allows you to become present. You stop obsessing over future outcomes and start engaging with the current moment. Presence gives you clarity, peace, and power, the three things overthinking takes away. Presence is the birthplace of intuitive action. Perfectionism steals joy. It makes every accomplishment feel insufficient, every effort feel lacking, every result feel disappointing. But when you embrace imperfection, you begin to celebrate progress. You start recognizing your growth in real time, instead of judging your journey against impossible standards. You don't need perfect decisions to build a meaningful life, you need aligned ones. Alignment comes from listening to your intuition, honoring your values, and choosing what expands you rather than what impresses others. When you choose from alignment, even the wrong turns lead you right. Letting go of perfection means giving yourself permission to be human. Humans learn, stumble, grow, adjust, and try again. Humans evolve through experience, not analysis. When you allow yourself to be human, you stop fearing mistakes and start respecting your journey. The truth is simple. Life rewards those who move, not those who plan endlessly. not those who wait for perfect clarity, not those who analyze every angle, but those who leap, learn, and adjust. Breaking perfection means embracing motion. When you release the demand for perfect decisions, you gain the courage to live. You start walking paths that excite you, not ones that scare you. You start trusting your inner voice instead of external expectations. You start building a life that feels true instead of one that looks safe. In the end, the only perfect decision is the one that moves you forward. Not because it's flawless, but because it's chosen, because it's lived, because it's yours. Perfection is a prison. Action is liberation. And the moment you stop demanding perfection, your real life begins. Chapter Say. Turning action into momentum. Momentum is born the moment action stops being a decision and becomes a rhythm. Most people take action once, feel tired, and stop then, wonder why nothing changes. Momentum isn't created by a single burst of effort. It's created by repeated movement, even when the energy is low. Action builds momentum the same way. Drops of water carve stone quietly, consistently, and with unstoppable force. The hardest part of creating momentum is the beginning. The first step feels heavy because your mind is still negotiating with fear, comfort, and old habits. But once you take that step, something shifts internally. Your brain realizes the world didn't end, your fears didn't come true, and action didn't break you. This realization is the spark that starts the engine. Momentum is the reward of discipline, not motivation. Motivation fades the moment discomfort appears, but discipline carries you beyond the feelings of the moment. When you show up repeatedly, whether you feel ready or not, you teach your brain that action isn't optional, it's the foundation of the life you're building. And from that consistency, momentum grows naturally. The beauty of momentum is that it makes hard things easier. A task that felt impossible when you started becomes normal once you've done it repeatedly. Your mind begins to adapt, your emotions stabilize, and your body adjusts. What was once a struggle turns into your second nature. That transformation is momentum turning effort into habit. Momentum doesn't require dramatic steps. In fact, small steps are far more powerful because they're sustainable. One page read, one call made, one task completed. These tiny actions compound silently. Each one adds weight to your future until your progress becomes undeniable. It's not the intensity that builds momentum, it's the repetition. The mind resists movement because it prefers the familiarity of inaction. But once you begin acting regularly, the mind adapts to a new identity, the identity of someone who follows through. That identity shift is what makes momentum powerful. You stop seeing action as a burden and start seeing it as a natural part of who you are. Momentum grows fastest when you remove the need for perfection. When you allow yourself to act imperfectly, you remove the barriers that slow you down. Perfectionism kills momentum because it forces you to restart, rethink, redo. Imperfection allows you to move, and movement is the only thing momentum needs. Action creates evidence, and evidence creates belief. Every time you follow through on a task, you gather proof that you are capable. That proof builds confidence, and confidence fuels more action. This loop, action, evidence, belief, is the engine of momentum. Once it starts, it becomes difficult to stop. Momentum also requires reducing friction. The more obstacles between you and your action, the harder it becomes to stay consistent. Simplifying your routines, organizing your environment, and preparing in advance all remove friction. When the path is clear, action becomes almost automatic, and momentum accelerates. There comes a moment when action becomes satisfying. At first, it feels forced. Then it becomes familiar, and eventually it becomes rewarding. You begin to crave progress. You begin to crave the feeling of moving forward. That shift from resistance to desire is the moment momentum becomes self-sustaining. Momentum protects you from emotional fluctuations. On good days, it amplifies your progress. On bad days, it carries you through. When you have momentum, you don't start from zero every morning. You start from the weight of everything you've already built. Your past effort becomes your present strength. Action turns into momentum when you stop waiting for inspiration. Inspiration is unreliable. Some days you feel it, some days you don't. But momentum doesn't care about your feelings. It grows from your willingness to move, even when inspiration is silent. Inspiration is a spark. Momentum is a fire. Momentum thrives when your actions align with your identity. When you see yourself as someone who acts, someone who builds, someone who follows through, your behaviors begin to reflect that identity. Identity-based action is the most powerful type of action. It creates momentum that feels natural instead of forced. A powerful truth is this: one small action can change the direction of your entire day. The first task completed in the morning creates psychological momentum. It tells your mind, "We're in motion." That single accomplishment increases your likelihood of completing the next task. Success breeds more success. Momentum compounds. The more you do, the more you can do. Your capacity expands with each action. Tasks that once overwhelmed you become manageable. Challenges that once intimidated you become routine. That expansion is not magic. It's momentum upgrading your tolerance for effort and your hunger for progress. Momentum breaks procrastination's grip. Procrastination thrives in stillness but dies in movement. When you complete even a small task, the spell is broken. You prove to yourself that inaction is a choice, not a prison. And once you choose action, procrastination loses its power over you. Action creates clarity. People often wait for clarity before taking action, but clarity is a product of doing, not thinking. When you move, you learn. When you act, you discover what works and what doesn't. That discovery creates direction, and direction creates momentum. Thinking keeps you uncertain. Movement makes you certain. Momentum is emotional armor. When you're in motion, doubt has less room to grow. Fear has less time to whisper. Overthinking has less opportunity to paralyze you. Movement interrupts mental noise. It gives your mind something productive to focus on and prevents negative thoughts from dominating your day. Momentum is built in silence, not in big announcements, not in dramatic revelations, but in quiet, consistent effort behind closed doors. The world sees the results, but never the discipline. The ones who seem naturally successful are simply the ones who mastered momentum when no one was watching. To create momentum, you must shrink your starting point. Don't aim to do everything, aim to start something. Lower the barrier. Make the first step so small that your mind can't refuse it. 1 minute. One task. One action. The smaller the beginning, the greater the momentum you can build from it. Momentum requires emotional detachment from outcomes. When you stop obsessing about results and start focusing on process, you free your mind to move without pressure. Results come from momentum, not from worry. Your job is the action. The outcome is the consequence. Action becomes momentum when you set systems, not just goals. Goals give direction. Systems create consistency. Anyone can set a goal. Only a disciplined mind builds a system that moves daily, regardless of mood. Systems make momentum automatic. Momentum requires patience. It doesn't appear after one day of effort. It forms gradually, silently. The problem is, most people quit right before momentum begins, right before their actions start compounding. But if you keep going long enough, that moment of acceleration arrives, and everything feels different. Momentum is predictable. It shows up when effort becomes routine. When you no longer ask, "Should I do this today?" but instead ask, "When am I doing it today?" That shift turns movement from an option into a lifestyle. Consistency becomes identity. Momentum grows when you celebrate progress. Every small win reinforces your desire to continue. You don't need to wait for big achievements to feel proud. Pride comes from honoring your effort. When you acknowledge your growth, your motivation strengthens and momentum multiplies. Momentum thrives on simplicity. The more complicated your plan, the easier it is to break. The simpler your routine, the stronger your consistency. Simplicity keeps you moving forward. Complexity keeps you stuck. A simple path done every day beats a perfect plan never executed. Action becomes momentum when you stop starting over. Most people build a little progress, stop, lose everything, and then restart from zero. Momentum grows when you refuse to reset, when you stay connected to your habits, when you keep the engine warm instead of letting it go cold. Momentum is not speed, it's continuity. You don't need to move fast, you just need to keep moving. Slow progress is still progress. Steady effort still compounds. Life rewards the ones who don't stop, not the ones who sprint and collapse. Momentum transforms your relationship with effort. What once felt exhausting begins to feel empowering. What once drained you begins to energize you. That shift happens because effort becomes associated with progress instead of pressure. Momentum makes effort meaningful. Action becomes momentum when you stop negotiating with your excuses. Excuses steal the energy needed to build consistency. But when you decide that action is non-negotiable, you remove the mental resistance that slows you down. Decision creates movement. Negotiation creates delay. Momentum is self-trust in motion. Every action reinforces belief in your ability to follow through. That belief makes the next action easier. Trust builds commitment, and commitment builds momentum. You grow into someone whose word to themselves actually means something. Momentum is how ordinary people achieve extraordinary results. They aren't superhuman, they're consistent. They stack effort day after day until the world can't ignore them. They understand that a slow, steady climb beats a dramatic but short-lived burst. Once momentum becomes part of your identity, success stops being accidental. It becomes predictable. You no longer hope for progress, you expect it. You no longer dream of results, you produce them. Momentum turns ambition into reality. Momentum doesn't just change what you do, it changes who you are. It turns you from someone who hesitates into someone who executes, from someone who dreams into someone who builds, from someone who fears effort into someone who thrives on growth. With momentum, your potential stops being theoretical, it becomes visible. In the end, turning action into momentum is simple. Move, repeat, refine. Don't aim for perfect days, aim for consistent ones. Don't chase intensity, chase continuity. Because the moment movement becomes your habit, momentum becomes your lifestyle. And once momentum becomes your lifestyle, your life begins to rise. Chapter 7. Learning to live in the present, not the past. The past becomes a prison the moment you let it define who you are instead of what you've learned. Most people don't live in their present life, they live in their old wounds, old memories, old identities. They replay what hurt them, what broke them, what disappointed them, until the past feels more real than the moment they're standing in. But the present is the only place where life actually happens. The past is finished. The future is imagined. Only the present can be shaped. Living in the present begins with understanding that you are not the same person who lived through those old moments. You've grown, changed, evolved, gained wisdom, and built strength. But if you keep thinking with your past self's mindset, you'll keep repeating their life. You don't owe the past version of you your future. The present is your chance to reinvent yourself. The mind clings to the past because it fears uncertainty. The known, even the painful known, feels safer than the unknown. So you repeat memories like rituals, thinking they protect you from hurt, but they only protect you from growth. Life cannot move forward when your mind is anchored backward. Leaving the past isn't betrayal, it's alignment with who you're becoming. You can't live in the present while carrying old narratives. The stories you tell yourself, I always fail, people always leave, I'm not good enough, aren't truths. They're emotional memories disguised as beliefs. When you see them for what they are, they lose power. You begin to step into the moment instead of dragging yesterday into today. Freedom begins the moment you stop arguing with what already happened. You can't rewrite the past, but you can reinterpret it. You can choose to see loss as redirection, pain as transformation, betrayal as revelation. The meaning you assign to your past determines the meaning you assign to yourself. Heal the story, and the present becomes lighter. Most people don't fear the past, they fear letting it go. Because letting go means stepping into the present without excuses, without the identity that once defined you. The past is familiar, the present demands responsibility, but responsibility is where power lives. When you face the now, you face your real potential. Living in the present isn't about forgetting the past, it's about no longer living according to it. You let the past teach you, not trap you. You take the lesson and leave the wound. You use the wisdom, not the trauma. That shift allows you to walk forward without dragging chains you no longer need to carry. Presence requires surrender. Not surrender to weakness, but surrender to reality. You can't control what already happened. You can't control what hasn't happened yet. You can only influence this moment. And this moment, when used correctly, is powerful enough to reshape everything that comes after. The present becomes beautiful the moment you stop resisting it. When you stop wishing it were different. When you stop comparing it to old memories. When you stop judging it with old scars. Presence is a practice, a choice repeated every minute. This is where I am. This is what I can build from. Living in the present heals anxiety because anxiety is fear of the future you haven't even lived yet. It heals regret because regret is attachment to a past you can't return to. It heals overthinking because overthinking is the mind trying to escape the now. Presence takes you out of mental time travel and grounds you in truth. The present often feels uncomfortable because it's honest. It exposes what you've avoided, reveals what you've delayed, and shows you what needs to change. But that honesty is a gift. Healing only happens in reality. Growth only happens in awareness. The present moment is where you meet yourself without illusion. You begin to live in the present when you learn to observe your thoughts instead of becoming them. When a memory arises, you see it as a visitor, not a command. When a regret appears, you see it as information, not identity. This shift turns your mind into a tool instead of a tyrant. The present becomes accessible. The more time you spend in the present, the quieter the past becomes. Old memories lose emotional charge. Old pain stops defining your choices. Old heartbreak stops shaping your self-image. Presence weakens the past, the same way sunlight weakens shadows, not by fighting them, but by illuminating something stronger. Living in the present means feeling life directly, instead of through memory or fear. You taste your food, you hear the wind, you notice your breath, you experience your emotions without judgment. This simple awareness reconnects you to your humanity, the part of you that life numbed but never destroyed. The present moment teaches you perspective. It shows you that the things you once thought were endings were actually beginnings. It shows you that you survived what once felt unbearable. It shows you that your past self didn't know your future strength. And that strength is only fully accessible right now. in this breath. You learn to live in the present when you accept that you cannot change yesterday, but you can change how you meet today. You can choose patience instead of frustration, gratitude instead of fear, action instead of overthinking. This choice, made daily, reshapes your entire life over time. Presence gives you control, where control actually exists in your response, your choices, your behavior, your attention. You gain power when you focus on what you can influence. The past is untouchable. The present is your workshop. When you build here, the future takes care of itself. Most people rehearse their pain more than they rehearse their potential. They revisit moments that broke them instead of moments that built them. But the present doesn't care about your emotional habits. It offers fresh ground every day. When you step into the now, you step into the possibility of living differently. Your attention is your currency. Wherever you spend, it becomes your reality. If you invest it in the past, you keep reliving the same story. If you invest it in the present, you start writing a new one. Attention determines destiny, not time, not luck, not circumstance. Living in the present demands compassion toward yourself. You must forgive yourself for not knowing better before. You must forgive yourself for mistakes made in survival mode. You must release the self-judgment that ties you to old versions of you. Compassion anchors you in the now by softening the grip of the past. The present moment is where healing becomes possible because it's where you can actually act. You can breathe, you can pause, you can choose differently. You can redirect your thoughts. You can take a step forward. The past offers pain. The present offers power. Presence reminds you that life is happening now, not in memory, not in imagination. Your relationships, your goals, your opportunities, your transformations all exist in this moment. When you return to the now, you participate in your life instead of watching it pass by while lost in thought. The past becomes smaller as your life in the present becomes bigger. When you fill your days with growth, connection, purpose, and curiosity, there's less room for old pain to dominate your mind. Presence expands your world. The past shrinks it. Learning to live in the present starts with attention. You cannot be here if your mind is somewhere else. So you bring your awareness back again and again. Every time it drifts, you return without judgment. This repetition builds the muscle of presence and weakens the habit of rumination. Presence transforms relationships. You listen more fully. You speak more truthfully. You connect more deeply. When you're not replaying old wounds or anticipating future threats, you actually meet people where they are instead of through the filter of who hurt you before. The present moment helps you see yourself clearly, not as the person you were, not as the person you fear becoming, but as the person you are right here, breathing, capable, imperfect, evolving. That clarity grounds you. It brings honesty and self-respect. Living in the present also protects your energy. You stop wasting emotional strength on things already over. You stop fighting battles that ended long ago. You stop bleeding energy into scenarios that only exist in your mind. The present simplifies your emotional world. The past loses power when you accept that it cannot harm you unless you let it live through your thoughts. Those events are gone. The only place they exist is in memory. When you let them pass through you instead of clinging to them, they lose their ability to shape you. Presence teaches you adaptability. Life changes constantly. The present moment is your chance to adjust, pivot, respond, grow. The more you live in the now, the more resilient you become. The past makes you rigid. The present makes you fluid. You begin living in the present when you understand that every moment is a fresh beginning. You don't need a new year, a new week, or a new season. You need one breath, one decision, one shift of awareness. And suddenly, the past loosens its grip. Presence is peace, not because life becomes perfect, but because you stop fighting with time. You let go of the weight of what's gone. You stop chasing what's not here yet. You return to the moment where your power actually is. The present moment is where gratitude grows. Not the gratitude of forced positivity, but the gratitude of noticing the sunlight, the breath, the chance to try again. Gratitude roots you in the moment and softens the pain of the past. Living in the present lets you rebuild your identity. You're no longer the sum of your wounds. You're the sum of your choices. You become someone shaped by intention instead of memory. Someone defined by presence instead of history. The past cannot follow you into the present unless you carry it. Every day you have the chance to put it down, to stop dragging what hurt you into moments meant to heal you, to let the future be different from the story behind you. The present moment invites you to participate in your own becoming, to decide who you want to be now, not who you were then, to act from clarity instead of from fear, to build a life that reflects your growth, not your scars. And in the end, learning to live in the present means claiming your life back. It means refusing to let yesterday control your today. It means waking up to the truth that everything you want, peace, growth, love, change, transformation, is only possible right here, in this moment, where you finally begin to live again. You begin to reclaim your present when you stop giving the past more authority than it deserves. The past is not a judge, it is a reference point. It shows you what you survived, not what you must continue to carry. When you look at it this way, every memory that once felt heavy becomes lighter. You see it not as a chain, but as a chapter one that helped you grow, but no longer needs to dictate your next steps. Living in the present becomes easier when you realize the past cannot deliver anything new. No matter how many times you replay old conversations or imagine different outcomes, nothing changes. The past is static, unmoving, sealed. The present, however, is alive. It is fluid, changing, full of possibility. When you put your attention where life is active instead of where it is frozen, you feel your energy returning. The present moment reveals how much beauty you have been missing while living in your mind. You begin to notice details that were always there but drowned out by thought. The warmth of sunlight, the softness of morning air, the quiet moments of peace that existed even in hard days. These small moments remind you that life has been offering comfort, connection, and meaning all along. You were just too far in the past to feel them. When you stay stuck in old stories, you keep yourself separated from opportunities meant for you. You walk through life with your eyes turned backward, unable to see the doors opening right in front of you. The present becomes a blur, not because it lacks potential, but because your attention is trapped elsewhere. Freedom begins when you turn around and face what's here. Presence teaches you that you are safer now than you once were. The fears that shaped your past choices may not apply anymore. You have more strength, more awareness, more capability than the version of you who endured those experiences. When you acknowledge this difference, the present becomes less frightening. You realize the danger isn't the moment, it's the memory. Living in the present allows you to feel your emotions honestly instead of through the filter of old pain. You stop reacting to now as if it were then. You begin to respond to situations based on reality instead of past trauma. This shift changes everything: your relationships, your confidence, your choices. You begin to act as the person you are, not the person you once had to be. The past often feels louder than the present because it's familiar. Your mind returns to what it knows, even if it hurts. But the present becomes louder when you start engaging with it intentionally, when you speak your truth, when you focus on your breath, when you take action toward your goals. Engagement strengthens presence. Avoidance strengthens memory. Presence teaches you patience. When you stop rushing into the future or clinging to the past, you learn to trust the pace of your life. You begin to see that timing isn't punishment, it's alignment. Not everything is meant to happen at once. When you're in the present, you're in the timing that's meant for you. The present moment invites you to show up fully instead of half-heartedly. Instead of giving your attention to 10 different worries, you give it to what's in front of you. This creates depth. It strengthens your impact. It improves your focus. When you invest in the moment gives back clarity, direction, and peace. You learn to live in the present when you stop measuring your life by what you lost and start appreciating what you still have. Gratitude is not ignoring pain, it's acknowledging what remains. It's choosing to notice the blessings that survived the storms. This perspective pulls you out of regret and anchors you in possibility. When you live in the present, your goals become more grounded. Instead of dreaming vaguely about a distant future, you take actual steps today. You choose habits that support your growth. You make decisions that represent who you want to be. The present becomes your anchor point for building the life you want. Presence reduces emotional reactivity. When you're here instead of in your memories, you respond with intention instead of impulse. You pause. You breathe. You observe. You don't let old wounds hijack new moments. This emotional stability improves every part of your life, your relationships, your communication, your self-trust. Living in the present reminds you that healing is happening right now, not yesterday, not tomorrow, right here. Every breath you take in awareness rewires your nervous system. Every moment of mindfulness softens old patterns. Healing is not an event. It is a series of present moments where you choose awareness over automatic reaction. Presence humbles you. It reminds you that life isn't something to control but something to participate in. When you release the need to predict outcomes or rewrite history, you step into a gentler rhythm. You become more open, more curious, more patient. Humility grounds you in truth instead of fantasy. The present moment is where you reconnect with your body. Trauma pulls you into your mind. Presence brings you back into your skin. You notice your heartbeat, your breath, your sensations. You realize you're alive, safe, and here. This embodiment is one of the most powerful healing experiences available to you. Living in the present helps you stop comparing your life to others. Comparison thrives in imagination, not in presence. When you're focused on now, you're not thinking about someone else's timeline, you're walking your own. You're not measuring your worth against others, you're experiencing your growth in real time. The past becomes oppressive when you replay what you can't change. But when you engage with the present, you regain control. You can shape this moment, influence this decision, improve this situation. Present moment action is the antidote to past moment pain. Presence helps you recognize the people who truly matter. When you stop seeing others through the lens of past betrayal, you see them for who they are now. Some people deserve to stay, others deserve to fade. The present moment reveals both clearly, without emotional distortion. Living in the present reconnects you with your intuition. Intuition only speaks in the now. It gives you nudges, signals, feelings, none of which can be heard when your mind is trapped in yesterday. When you return to the present, your instincts become clearer and your decisions become wiser. The present is where you reclaim your attention. Attention is the most valuable resource you have. When you stop feeding it into past pain, you begin investing it into growth, learning, connection, and creativity. Those investments produce a future that feels good to live in. The more you practice presence, the more your mind learns to trust the now. It stops expecting danger around every corner. It stops reacting to new situations with old fear. Presence retrains your nervous system to feel safe in life again. Living in the present teaches you acceptance, not passive acceptance, but powerful acceptance, the kind that acknowledges reality and then chooses how to respond to it. You stop fighting what is and start shaping what can be. Presence allows you to enjoy the small victories you often overlook. You begin to celebrate progress instead of dismissing it. You recognize the growth you used to ignore. You feel pride in moments you once minimized. And pride builds self-worth. Living in the present brings awareness to your habits. You notice when you're escaping, avoiding, numbing, or distracting. You catch yourself before you fall back into old cycles. Awareness gives you the power to choose differently. Presence helps you understand that your life is worth feeling, not numbing, not escaping, not revising, feeling the joy, the sadness, the confusion, the excitement, all of it. When you're here, fully here, your life becomes richer. You begin to trust yourself more when you live in the present. Self-trust grows from making choices aligned with who you are today, not who you were yesterday. Each aligned choice becomes evidence that you can guide yourself well. The present moment invites you to soften, to drop the harshness you developed in survival mode, to stop bracing for impact, to stop expecting hurt. Softness is not weakness, it is the doorway to peace. You can only enter it through presence. Living in the present helps you stop rushing your life. When you're no longer trying to escape the past or hurry into the future, you settle into the pace meant for you. You realize that nothing meaningful needs to be forced. The present is where you build new memories. Memories that are not shaped by trauma or fear, but by intention and presence. One day these moments will be the ones you look back on with gratitude instead of pain. When you live in the present, you stop measuring your worth by past versions of yourself. You start valuing who you are becoming. You realize that growth is not linear and that every day offers a new chance to rise. Presence helps you reconnect with your purpose. When your mind stops replaying old failures, your deeper desires become clearer. You remember what excites you, what moves you, what inspires you. Purpose is always found in the now. You learn to embrace uncertainty through presence. Instead of fearing the unknown, you begin to see it as possibility, as potential, as space for your life to expand. The present moment teaches you that uncertainty is where growth lives. Living in the present softens your relationship with time. You stop feeling behind. You stop feeling rushed. You begin to understand that you're moving at the pace meant for your journey, not someone else's schedule. The past becomes lighter when you realize you don't need it to be different in order to be free. You only need to stop carrying it. Presence is the act of putting the weight down over and over until walking becomes easy again. The present teaches you gratitude for your own resilience. You survived things you were not prepared for. You endured moments you thought would break you. And yet here you are, breathing, learning, living. That acknowledgement is powerful. Living in the present reconnects you with hope. Hope doesn't come from remembering pain or predicting disaster. It comes from witnessing the possibility in each moment. And possibility is always here, never in the past. As you deepen into presence, you begin to notice how much of your suffering was created by your mind's resistance to now. When you accept the moment instead of fighting it, peace arises naturally. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become more aligned with it. And ultimately, living in the present allows you to finally become yourself. Not the wounded version you once were, not the worried version you imagined becoming, but the real, evolving, growing, grounded you. The you who exists right here, in this breath, in this moment, ready for the life that is unfolding now. Chapter 8. Flowing with life instead of fighting it. Flow begins the moment you stop trying to force life into your expectations and start allowing it to unfold in its natural rhythm. Most of your suffering comes from trying to control what was never in your control. People, timing, outcomes, emotions, opportunities. When you fight life, life pushes back. But when you move with it, life becomes lighter. Flow is not passive. It's intelligent surrender, the willingness to let things happen without resisting what is already true. Flow requires trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in the process. trust in the unfolding, not blind trust, but quiet confidence that you can handle whatever arrives and release whatever leaves. Fighting life comes from fear. Flowing with life comes from alignment. The more you trust, the less tense you become. Tension blocks possibility. Openness invites it. Your energy becomes clearer when you stop arguing with reality. Flow teaches you that everything has its timing. Nothing meaningful arrives too early, and nothing meant for you stays too long in limbo. When you fight life, you rush, you panic, you force things that aren't ready. But when you flow, you understand that timing is not controlled by desire, it's controlled by readiness. And readiness is something the universe knows before you do. Flow invites you to experience each moment directly, instead of through a filter of fear or expectation. Fighting life fills your mind with what should be. Flowing fills your mind with what is. What is real becomes enough. You begin to appreciate life as it unfolds, not as you imagined it. This deepens your presence, your peace, and your understanding of your own path. When you fight life, you cling to people, plans, identities, illusions. You grip so tightly that your hands can't receive anything new. Flow teaches you to loosen your grip, to hold things gently, to let what is meant to stay effortlessly, and to let what must leave, exit without destruction. Flow isn't letting go, it's letting be. Flow reveals that most of your pain is self-created through resistance. Resistance to change, to endings, to beginnings, to discomfort, to uncertainty. The moment you stop resisting, the moment you allow life to express itself naturally, the pain softens. Because the pain was never from the moment it was, from your fight against the moment. Flow teaches you to move with transitions instead of clinging to stability that has expired. Life is a series of currents, relationships shifting, opportunities evolving, emotions rising and falling. When you fight the current, you tire yourself. When you move with it, you arrive at a new shore you could not have found alone. Flow guides you toward growth. When you flow with life, you stop forcing people to be who they once were. You stop demanding that circumstances remain familiar. You stop trying to freeze time so you feel safe. Flow allows people to change, situations to evolve, and the world to move. And in that movement, you grow into someone more adaptable, grounded, and wise. Flow helps you release the illusion of control. Control was never real. It was a coping mechanism. You cannot control outcomes, but you can control your presence. You cannot control timing, but you can control your decisions. Flow shifts your focus from the uncontrollable to the essential. This is how anxiety dissolves and clarity emerges. Flow is not giving up. It is giving in to your deeper truth. Fighting life means clinging to a path that no longer fits you, out of fear of the unknown. Flow means trusting that the unknown holds possibilities your old plans could never offer. The unknown becomes a canvas instead of a threat, a place of creation instead of collapse. When you begin to flow, you stop seeing challenges as punishments. You see them as currents redirecting you toward a better alignment. Every obstacle becomes information. Every difficulty becomes instruction. Flow transforms struggle into guidance. Life stops feeling hostile and starts feeling directional. Flow teaches you to respond instead of react. Reactions come from fear. Responses come from awareness. When you live in reaction, you fight everything that triggers you. When you live in response, you move with life, not against it. You pause, breathe, observe, and then act. This shift brings maturity and peace. Flow reminds you that not all movement is forward. Some movement is downward, inward, backward, or still. Nature grows this way. Cycles, seasons, spirals, expansions, and contractions. You are nature too. Flowing with life means honoring every phase without labeling it as failure or success. Every cycle has a purpose. Fighting life often comes from attachment to identity. You cling to who you were instead of who you are becoming. Flow requires shedding old versions of yourself, versions built from survival, fear, or exhaustion. As you evolve, your identity must evolve too. Flow lets you die and rebirth many times without fear. When you flow, you let life surprise you. You stop demanding outcomes and start allowing them. You stop predicting your future based on your past. Surprises become invitations rather than dangers. Flow opens doors you didn't even know existed because you finally stop blocking them with your expectations. Flow improves your emotional resilience. When you stop fighting feelings and start letting them pass through you, they lose their intensity. Anxiety becomes a wave instead of a storm. Sadness becomes a release instead of a collapse. Emotions transform into movements rather than prisons. Flow is emotional freedom. Fighting life is exhausting because it's unnatural. Everything in existence flows: rivers, seasons, clouds, the heartbeat, the breath. You are part of that flow. When you align with the natural movement of life, you access energy you didn't know you had. Flow gives energy. Resistance drains it. Flow teaches you to trust the process of loss. Not all departures are tragedies, many are corrections. When someone leaves, something else shifts into place. Flow helps you see endings not as failures, but as the space required for rebirth. The space that allows what is truly meant for you to arrive without obstruction. When you flow with life, you stop needing constant certainty. Certainty becomes less important than experience. Instead of needing guarantees, you begin to value the journey. Life becomes something to explore, not something to control. This mindset creates a kind of inner freedom that control can never offer. Flow is the opposite of perfectionism. Perfection demands rigid expectations. Flow invites adaptability. Perfection is brittle. Flow is flexible. When life doesn't match your expectations, perfection breaks. Flow bends. And because it bends, it survives, heals, and expands. You learn to flow when you stop taking life personally. Not everything happens because of you. Much happens because of timing, environment, cycles, and the choices of others. When you stop internalizing everything, you lighten your emotional load. Flow allows you to witness life without absorbing every detail as a wound. Flow teaches you to make space for the unknown. The unknown is where creativity, love, opportunities, and breakthroughs originate. When you fight life, you try to fill every gap with control. When you flow, you let the gaps breathe, and those empty spaces become the birthplace of something new. Flow invites you to trust that life supports you even when it challenges you. Support doesn't always look like comfort. Sometimes it looks like redirection, closure, discomfort, or delayed timing. The universe doesn't only guide you through blessings, it also guides you through barriers. Flow recognizes both as guidance. When you stop fighting life, you stop fighting yourself. You stop punishing yourself for not knowing better. You stop blaming yourself for past decisions. Flow introduces compassion where shame once lived. You begin to treat yourself as someone evolving, not someone failing. Flow encourages you to be present, not trapped in the past, not anxious about the future. Present. The moment you stop resisting the now, you gain access to clarity that you couldn't see while wrestling with what you couldn't change. Presence sharpens your perception and softens your suffering. Flow reminds you that you are allowed to change your mind. Fighting life means stubbornly sticking to things that no longer feel right. Flow allows you to pivot, to adjust, to choose again, to honor your new truth without apologizing for outgrowing your old one. Flexibility is strength. Flow teaches you that what is meant for you is not fragile. If something requires you to fight constantly to keep it, it is not aligned. Flow-based alignment feels stable even when it's challenged. It doesn't collapse under pressure. Flow stays when it's right and leaves when it's wrong. When you flow with life, you become more attuned to opportunities. You see openings instead of obstacles. You notice possibilities instead of problems. Flow sharpens your intuition by clearing away the noise created by resistance. You become someone who moves with life's rhythm instead of tripping over it. Flow helps you recognize that pausing is also progress. Not every phase is meant for action. Some seasons require stillness, reflection, healing, or preparation. Fighting life means forcing movement. Flowing with life means honoring the season you're in. Stillness is not stagnation when it is intentional. You flow with life when you stop needing to know how everything will work out. Not because you're careless, but because you're anchored in adaptability. You trust that you can adjust to whatever comes. This trust reduces fear more effectively than any amount of planning ever could. Flow liberates you from overthinking. When you stop fighting the unknown, your mind relaxes. It stops catastrophizing. It stops replaying memories. It stops inventing threats. Flow quiets the noise of fear and amplifies the guidance of intuition. The mind becomes an ally instead of an enemy. Flow makes room for joy. Not forced joy, but natural joy, the kind that appears when your inner world is not at war with your outer world. Joy rises when you stop resisting your life and start participating in it. When you stop fighting time and begin living within its rhythm. Fighting life keeps you stuck. Flow moves you forward, even when life feels slow. Flow ensures that something inside you is shifting, opening, aligning. Growth doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's invisible. But flow guarantees that movement is happening, even when you can't see it yet. You know you're flowing with life when you stop clinging to outcomes and start valuing direction. When the journey matters as much as the destination. When you trust the unfolding enough to release your grip on certainty. Flow replaces desperation with intention, fear with trust, rigidity with openness. Flow teaches you that peace is not the absence of problems, it is the absence of resistance to the present moment. Problems may still exist, but your relationship to them transforms. You stop drowning in what you cannot control and begin navigating what you can. Peace becomes possible. And ultimately, flowing with life means living with less fear and more awareness. Less control and more trust. Less force and more alignment. It means meeting each moment with openness instead of resistance, wisdom instead of panic, presence instead of pressure. When you finally stop fighting life, you discover it was never against you, it was guiding you all along. Flow becomes easier when you finally realize that life is not something you win, it's something you experience. Every moment, whether painful or peaceful, is meant to be lived through, not resisted. Fighting life keeps you trapped in survival mode, constantly bracing for things to go wrong. But flowing with life reminds you that not every moment requires defense. Some moments only require presence. And presence is how you reclaim your inner rhythm. You begin to flow when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to show me?" This shift instantly moves you from victimhood to awareness. Life becomes a teacher instead of an attacker. Challenges become messages instead of punishments. And once you adopt this mindset, nothing that happens feels meaningless. Everything carries insight. Flow teaches you to let emotions move through you, instead of letting them define you. When sadness arises, you allow it. When joy appears, you embrace it. When fear surfaces, you sit with it. Emotions become waves, not identities. Fighting life forces you to suppress or judge your emotions, trapping them inside. Flow gives them permission to enter and leave naturally. This alone can change your entire inner world. Everything that flows in nature finds ease eventually. Even storms pass, rivers carve new paths, Winds soften, seasons shift. You are not separate from that natural law. Your life too has seasons of growth, loss, reflection, rebuilding. When you fight the season you're in, you suffer. When you flow with it, you evolve. Flow is accepting that every season has a purpose, even if it's uncomfortable. Flow liberates you from the need to rush. When you fight life, you become obsessed with speed, getting there fast, achieving quickly, proving yourself instantly. But in flow, you understand that depth matters more than speed, direction matters more than pace, and growth that comes gradually tends to last longer than growth that is forced. Flow reveals that slow progress is still progress. You learn to flow when you stop expecting life to move in straight lines. Real growth is non-linear. It loops, dips, rises, pauses. Fighting life means expecting instant results. Flowing means embracing gradual transformation. When you accept that your journey isn't meant to be perfect or smooth, you stop feeling like something is wrong. You realize you are simply human. Flow teaches you to let go of resistance to change. Change is not the enemy, fear is. Life is constantly evolving, and the sooner you learn to adapt, the freer you become. Fighting life means clinging to chapters you've outgrown. Flow means honoring them, thanking them, and then releasing them. You make space for what's next, because you trust that what's next is aligned. Flow helps you recognize when something is forcing itself. When you push against a wall that refuses to move, you exhaust yourself. When you push a door that's meant to open, it does so effortlessly. Flow sharpens your awareness of which situations are walls and which are doors. You learn when to persist, when to pivot, and when to walk away, all without drama. You begin flowing with life when you stop believing everything must make sense immediately. Life's wisdom often reveals itself in hindsight. Your intuition knew before your logic did. Your spirit understood before your mind could explain. Flow is trusting the understanding that comes later. Fighting life is demanding clarity before moving. Flow trusts the process enough to move without complete certainty. Flow teaches you the power of patience, not passive waiting, but aligned patience. Patience that says, I am doing my part, and I trust life to do its part. This kind of patience dissolves anxiety and creates inner peace. Fighting life demands immediate fulfillment. Flow honors timing. Flow helps you release the ego's need to control outcomes. The ego fears unpredictability. It wants guarantees, stability, predictability. But life cannot be boxed into rigid expectations. Flow invites you to soften the ego by accepting what you cannot control and focusing on what you can, your attitude, your choices, your awareness. This shifts you into a deeper intelligence. Flow allows relationships to evolve naturally. You stop forcing connections that have lost authenticity. You stop clinging to dynamics that drain you. Flow respects the movement of relationships. Some grow closer, some drift, some transform. Fighting life forces you into roles that no longer fit. Flow gives permission for alignment. Flow brings a gentleness to your self-talk. When you stop fighting life, you stop fighting yourself. You no longer punish yourself for mistakes. You see mistakes as movement. You see detours as redirection. You speak to yourself with compassion instead of judgment. Flow creates internal safety. Flow reminds you that life always balances itself. For every ending, there is a beginning. For every loss, an opening. For every closed door, a new direction. When you stop resisting the endings, you make space for the beginnings. Fighting life blinds you to what's next. Flow helps you welcome it. Flow helps you trust your intuition, because intuition speaks in the language of flow. It nudges, guides, whispers, never forces. When you are aligned, intuition becomes clearer than fear. You begin to see synchronicities, signs, subtle pulls toward people, places, and opportunities meant for you. Fighting life blocks intuition. Flow amplifies it. Flow teaches you that ease is not laziness. Ease is alignment. When things flow, it's not because you're doing nothing, it's because you're doing the right things. When you fight life, everything becomes heavy. When you flow, things unfold with natural clarity. Effort still exists, but it becomes meaningful instead of draining. Flow allows you to handle unpredictability with grace. Instead of panicking when plans change or life surprises you, you adapt, you pivot, you stay centered. You don't collapse under uncertainty because you trust your ability to respond. Flow creates resilience stronger than control ever could. Flow reveals that not everything lost is a loss. Some things exit because they fulfilled their purpose. Some people leave because your energies no longer align. Some dreams dissolve because bigger ones are on the horizon. Fighting life tries to hold on to everything. Flow honors what was and welcomes what's next. Flow invites you to enjoy the journey instead of obsessing over the destination. When you stop rushing toward outcomes, you start noticing the meaning in each step. The small moments become sacred. The ordinary becomes beautiful. The journey becomes the reward, not the waiting between milestones. Flow teaches you that acceptance is not giving up. Acceptance is clarity. It's seeing things as they are, not as you wish them to be. Fighting life distorts your vision. Flow sharpens it. You make better decisions when you see clearly. When you flow, you stop resisting your own growth. Growth is uncomfortable. It stretches you, challenges you, exposes parts of you that need healing. Fighting life avoids growth. Flow embraces it. You begin to welcome discomfort as a sign that something new is emerging within you. Flow helps you let go of the need to be right. Fighting life holds onto arguments, grudges, and pride. Flow doesn't need winners or losers, only understanding. Flow prioritizes truth instead of ego. It brings peace where conflict once grew. Flow softens your relationship with uncertainty. Instead of viewing uncertainty as a threat, you see it as a doorway, a space where anything can happen, a realm where creativity and possibility grow. Fighting uncertainty makes life rigid. Flow allows life to surprise you. Flow reveals opportunities you couldn't see while resisting. Resistance narrows your perspective. Flow expands it. When you stop fighting what is, you begin to notice options you missed before: new ideas, new connections, new pathways. Your world opens. Flow teaches you to slow down, to breathe, to feel, to notice. Fighting life rushes you past meaning. Flow allows significance to rise naturally. You experience life instead of sprinting through it numb and anxious. Flow helps you release the illusion that you must always be strong. Flow welcomes vulnerability. It allows you to soften without breaking. It allows you to rest without guilt. It allows you to feel without shutting down. Vulnerability becomes part of the rhythm instead of a threat. Flow brings gratitude into places you once resented. You begin to see how past challenges shaped your wisdom, how difficult seasons grew your strength, how failures guided your redirection. Flow reframes your story, turning pain into perspective. Flow dissolves the need to compete. When you're aligned, you no longer see life as a race. You understand that your timing is your own, your journey is your own, and your growth is not tied to anyone else. Fighting life thrives on comparison. Flow thrives on authenticity. Flow helps you recognize when life is whispering, "Not yet." Sometimes delays are protection. Sometimes waiting is preparation. Fighting life tries to force outcomes prematurely. Flow trusts the preparation phase. Not everything is meant to bloom immediately. Flow teaches you not to cling to certainty, but to cultivate adaptability. Life is constantly shifting, and your power lies not in controlling the shifts, but in learning to move with them. Adaptability becomes your strength, not rigidity. Flow strengthens your ability to listen to yourself, to others, to your intuition, to life's subtle guidance. Fighting life makes you defensive and loud. Flow makes you receptive and aware. You notice what truly matters. Flow helps you let go of cycles that repeat because of resistance. When you fight life, patterns get louder. When you flow, cycles break. Because flowing allows you to respond differently, choose differently, and behave differently. You stop feeding the old loop and start creating a new one. Flow deepens your relationship with peace. Peace is not found in the absence of problems. It's found in the presence of acceptance. When you stop resisting the moment, your nervous system relaxes. You breathe more deeply. You exist more fully. Peace becomes your natural state. Flow helps you trust your own unfolding. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need a perfect map. You only need openness, awareness, and willingness. Life reveals the next step when you're ready, not when you're anxious. Flow brings you back to yourself, to your center, to the part of you that knows how to navigate life without fear. When you stop fighting life, you stop abandoning yourself. You become aligned with your truth again. Flow reveals that everything is working for you, even when it feels against you. Life is not trying to break you, it's trying to move you, to shape you, to guide you. Flow lets you receive that guidance without resistance. And when you finally learn to flow with life, you discover a freedom you never knew was possible, a freedom rooted not in control, but in trust. A freedom born from surrender, softness, openness, and alignment. A freedom that turns every moment into a possibility. A freedom that transforms your entire way of being. In the end, your life won't be shaped by the thoughts you analyzed. It will be shaped by the actions you took. Overthinking was never protection. It was a prison. It kept you replaying the past, fearing the future, and missing the moments that were trying to move you forward. But once you choose flow, everything changes. You stop forcing life and start aligning with it. Flow is not about letting go of responsibility. It's about letting go of fear. It's about trusting your steps, even when the path isn't perfectly lit. It's about realizing you don't need to master everything before you begin. You grow as you move. You learn as you live. You rise as you walk. You're not here to figure out every outcome. You're here to experience the journey. When you challenge yourself to act, to try, to move, your confidence grows faster than any amount of thinking could ever create. So stop waiting for the perfect moment. It doesn't exist. Start flowing. Start living. Because the life you want is not waiting in your thoughts. It's waiting in your courage.